Welcome to Good News Books. I'm your host, Sarah Livingston, and today on the show we have a very special guest. It's going to be quite a treat. Her name is Mary Selzer. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Very excited. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My husband is a pastor. We've been pastoring the same church for almost 28 years.
Wow.
And we have two daughters. One is married to a pastor in Oklahoma, and the other one is married to a policeman in New Mexico. And they've blessed us with 5 grandchildren, whom I love dearly, but my regret is that they live so far away.
Oh, yeah. That would be hard.
Yeah.
Aw.
So, and I was born and raised in Detroit, and we are actually pastoring the church that I was raised in.
Wow.
So,
Okay. You and your husband?
yep.
Wow.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
How did you come to know the Lord?
Well, I think I cut my teeth on the church pew.
Okay.
So my mom and dad were very devoted Christians, but my grandmother actually was born in Iran and was connected with Presbyterian missionaries who brought her to the United States in the early 1900s. So my mom then was raised a Presbyterian, and she and my dad, their marriage was arranged because in the Middle Eastern culture,
Oh.
you arrange marriages.
Okay.
And so their marriage was arranged, and my dad actually came from a Baptist background. So my mom and dad got married, and they raised us in church. And so I've really pretty much known the Lord all my life. And I have a sister and 2 brothers, and all of us were raised to just love the Lord and be devoted to church and just follow the Lord.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
In your bio, it says that you're a leadership coach. Can you
I
tell us a little
am.
bit more about what that means and what that is?
Sure. I've been coaching for around 10 years. And as a coach, I work with leaders of nonprofit organizations. And I actually do 3 things as a coach. First, I honor whoever I coach as the expert in their life. And I come along as a thought partner. And I help them move towards the goals that they want to move towards, help them make decisions, help them process through different challenges that they might be facing. And then as a coach, I help them create new awareness. I don't come as the expert, as the one who knows, has all the answers, because I obviously don't, but they do. And so by asking powerful questions, it just kind of reaches in and kind of pulls out what they don't realize is in there. And it kind of helps them have a new awareness, like, oh, I never thought of that, or, And then I also encourage by helping them create goals, action steps, and just move forward. Basically, in a nutshell, coaching takes a person from where they are and moves them to the destination where they sense that God wants them to be.
And if someone needed a life coach, how would they get a hold of you to do something like that?
They could just go on my website or contact me by email. My website is coachingforward.net.
Okay, coachingforward.net.
Right.
And what kind of people would contact you? Like professionals, organizations, individuals? What kind of?
Sure, any, and primarily I work with leaders and directors of nonprofits, but if anybody contacted me about coaching, and if I didn't feel that I would be the right fit for them, I've got a whole list of coaches that I could refer them to. So anyone with questions about coaching, feel free to contact me.
Yeah, it's kind of like that saying where when you're doing something and you're immersed in it, sometimes you can miss some of the smallest details.
True.
That could make your business or your organization a success.
Sure.
So you just kind of come in and see what maybe they're overlooking.
Exactly.
And then encourage them
Right.
on how to
Right.
do that. That's
Right.
great.
Yeah,
Okay, I like
yeah.
this. I like this career.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand that you're an ordained minister.
I am.
Is that right? Okay. And you're a leader in your denomination.
I am.
What challenges do women ministers face that men possibly don't?
Right. Yeah. Fortunately, I think men and the world is more open to women being in places of leadership. And something that I've tried to apply is that I don't seek a position, I let a position seek me.
Yes.
So if I've trained myself and I've developed and I've become educated, and then I'm found worthy to serve in a position, I'll accept that position not because I'm a woman, but because I'm qualified for that position. You know, I think of people who are wanting to vote for Hillary Clinton. I would hope that their vote would be because they feel that she's the best qualified, not because she's a woman.
Right.
And I think as women, we sort of defeat ourselves because we'll want to promote the fact, I'm a woman, I deserve this because I'm a woman. No, you deserve it because you've worked towards that and you've proven yourself. And so I think that's very important for a woman to do.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And when the Lord gives you a position, you know it. That's why I liked it. Where you don't seek the position opens up for you.
Exactly.
Yes, I like that. And
Exactly.
it's very true. Promotion comes from the Lord.
Exactly. Exactly. So I was elected to a position of leadership, but several years ago, our denomination wanted to have I don't know if I should use this term, but I'll use it, a token female, just so there would be female representation on it. And but that didn't sit right with me because I thought if I ever do serve on that particular board, I want to be able to walk in that room the same way the men walked in, that they were elected by their peers.
Right.
And a year and a half ago, I was elected by my peers, so I could walk in the room the same way. I was the only woman on the board at that time, and I could walk in the same way the men did. That it wasn't something that I sought, but it was something really that the Lord granted in His favor.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What kinds of ministries have you been involved in?
Oh, a lot. I started in full-time ministry when I graduated from Bible college, and I started in working at a ministry called Teen Challenge.
You heard of it?
Yep. And so I served
Out of
there
Lansing?
No, actually I started in Detroit.
Okay.
And then I moved to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and worked at a men's center there. And so I spent the first 20 years of my ministry working in Teen Challenge.
Wow.
And and that's where I met my husband. Actually, we were both on staff, and we got married there. And so then in 1989 we moved back to Michigan, where we were invited to serve as pastors at the church where we are now. So I've done pastoral ministry.
Is that at East Point?
It is.
Okay.
Yes, Christian Trinity Church in East Point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, I've heard of it.
And then for 10 years, I served as the Women's Ministries Director for the state of Michigan in our denomination, and was able to plan retreats and conferences and lead missions trips and encourage women, and it was just really a great experience. Yeah, and then I transitioned into coaching. So most of what I do now is in the area of coaching, working with other leaders, encouraging people, and I lead the young adult group in our church, which I really love.
And you probably noticed through the years how the Lord kind of, like stepping stones, all the things that you were doing were leading to what you do now.
Exactly. Yep. You don't realize it at the time, but then afterwards you think, oh, I can do this now because
Of that training.
happened.
Right.
Exactly.
And at the time
Yeah.
you're like, why is this happening?
Right.
Because I started out bagging groceries in a grocery store.
Really?
Yes, when I was 16 years old. And it was a really fun job. It was during the summer. I was trying to raise money to get a car. And I look back now and I'm thinking, well, that was one of the best training experiences of my life.
Right.
Because you had to like really be on the move. You had to have good people skills, and you had to be willing to serve. I mean,
Sure.
there was a lot of good stuff about it that I really enjoyed that job.
Right, right.
And and so don't despise small beginnings. The Lord's just happy that the work's begun, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you have written 2 books,
I have.
and this is one of them here. It's called Wait a Minute, 30 Devotions Inspired by Life's Breath-Catching Moments. And your second book is titled
25 questions God asked.
Thank you.
Discover the answers that will change your life.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. We're going to talk about Wait a Minute, the book title, not wait,
Sure.
not you wait a
Okay.
minute, for just a few minutes.
Sure.
I noticed that your books are primarily devotionals.
They are.
What inspired you to start writing devotionals?
Well, I actually became interested in that when, since I've been coaching, I've been trained to be a coach trainer. So I train other coaches to, become
Yes.
coaches, obviously. And so I would begin the classes with a devotional. And some of the devotionals just really struck a chord with some of the students in the classes. And somebody said one time, you should get those published. And I'd never really even thought about it. And I thought, man. So I just started writing them out and just kind of developing my writing. And so it really came just because somebody just spoke a word and I just
Yeah.
kind of ran with it.
Yeah, just kind of put it out there. It was,
Right.
and it was already in you, and you already had all these great
Yeah.
things you wanted to share, and then somebody
Exactly.
kind of put a directional to it.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah.
how the Lord works too. He uses people sometimes. They just say something, and it just clicks, and you're like, wow. And that person might not even know that they were inspired by the Lord to even share it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
great. Okay. Did you always want to write? Was that something that you, for a while wanted to do, or was it just something that you kind of transitioned?
I had a friend when I was growing up, and I spent the weekend at her house, and she said, now, I spend a lot of my time writing, and we were only like maybe 10 years old. And she said, so do you want a pen and paper and you can write too? And I said, okay. And so I just watched her. She was just writing, and she was writing stories, and I thought, I think I could write a story. And I kind of clumsily, worked my way through that, but that sort of opened up my mind to maybe I could write. And then when I went to college, I was invited to be the feature writer for our college newspaper, and then I later became the literary editor of our yearbook. So I guess it's always been sort of kind of like what you referred to before. There's a process that you look back and you say, oh, I can do this now because I did that. So,
Yeah.
but to say that I always wanted to write a book, I can't really say that. Not until I really started being serious about going through the discipline of just sitting down at a computer and writing it and going through all that process.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And wait a minute, you want to explain to us just a little bit about the title,
Sure.
so people understand more about the book.
Yeah. So wait a minute is actually designed just to cause you to just sit down and not just read the chapter, but and I've picked different things that just happened in my own life, just small little minute things that you really wouldn't give a second thought to, but when you do give a second thought to it, you find out, boy, there's some real truth there. And just to encourage people to just take those breath-catching moments and stop, and if something happens to you or you experience something, just stop and pause and breathe it in for a minute and just say, what lesson am I supposed to learn from this?
Yeah.
Or how could I encourage somebody else because of what I just went through? So just to learn to wait a minute and slow the pace down.
And then they read that, and then at the end it has a prayer that kind of goes along with it.
Right.
And I liked her first chapter is called A Lesson from the Orange Peel.
Right.
And that's great. And what happens is that this young woman has visitors, and I'll let you finish, kind of describe what happens with this young woman.
Sure. It was actually printed in the Reader's Digest a number of years ago.
Okay.
And a woman was just having a bad day. Everything, her dryer broke, everything was just all, and so she was doing laundry, and she had to drape her laundry over the furniture. And right after she had just happened to drape her husband's clothing, I'll let you use your imagination, on the on the furniture, the doorbell rang, and there was her boyfriend from high school and his very stunning, beautiful wife. And she had no idea they were coming, and here she was just a mess, and so they walk in, and she's got clothes all over the place. She's trying to explain the dryer's broken, and they're seeing her husband's underwear.
Oh no.
So she said as she walked through the kitchen, there was a shriveled up, dusty orange peel on the floor, and it stuck to her shoe.
Oh no.
And so she's trying to, as they're sitting there talking, she's trying to knock the peel off her shoe, and they're watching all this. Anyway, the conversation finally ended. They left, and when her husband came home, she's just crying, and she was so humiliated. And he said, look at it this way. You think of how good you made them feel. because he's glad that he didn't marry you. So you just made them feel really good. So the whole point is, sometimes we may be embarrassed about something. We might say something that's kind of, we regret having said it, but sometimes maybe we just need to spend our lives making other people feel better than we feel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
lifting others up.
Exactly.
Encouraging others. And I like the way you talk about how she was showing a vulnerability.
Yes.
And that's kind of how I feel like your book is written. Each chapter, you kind of share a vulnerability. And you share personal things from your life.
I know.
And when I was reading it, it was profound, and I was like really taking it in and thinking about it, and like, how can I apply this to my life? I feel like each chapter was really thought-provoking, and it was
Thanks,
just
Sarah.
really helpful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I kind of revealed some mistakes and,
Yeah, you were just open and honest.
I know.
There wasn't anything to hide behind, because
Right.
it is a book that's going to help people.
Right.
It's going to help them think about it from a different angle. Think about it from a different position. You always hear it this way, but let's back into this just a little bit differently, kind of like whenever you coach. You see the
True.
things that they might miss. In the book,
It's
you
true.
see the things that people miss.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I saw, was a new angle on something I'd always heard
Yes.
over and over, but wait a minute.
Right.
This
right.
is different.
Right.
I
Right.
like this.
And that's why we need to stop and wait a minute. Just back up into
Yes.
that and just wait a minute and pause. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious about the inspiration behind the chapter called Entertaining Angels.
Yeah, my mom had a way. She was a great storyteller, and I think if anybody could have written the book, my mom could have. But she shared a story with me one time when my dad first started his business. And a lot of times when you first start a business, you don't have a lot of money because you've invested all your
Yes.
capital into the business.
It's called Feeding Your Children.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
you put it back into the company.
Right, right. So she said one day, it was a winter day, and my mom and dad really didn't have a whole lot of money, didn't have a lot of food in the house, but there was a knock at the door, and she went to the door, and there was this man just shivering cold, and he said, "Lady, I'm so hungry, I've got no food, I need food for my kids, could you help me?" So my mom invited him in, and all she had was, I think she said all she had was eggs, so she fixed them some fried eggs and toast.
Wow, nice.
And then she filled his pockets with canned soup and different canned food.
Wow.
And he thanked her profusely, and he headed for the front door, and she followed him to tell him goodbye, and by the time she got to the door, he was gone. And she looked, and there were no footprints in the snow.
Wow.
And so then my mom would say to me, "Mary, I really think I entertained an angel that day." So that's the story behind Entertaining Angels.
That's great.
Yeah, but we never know, if a stranger comes our way. Like I know you had a situation today, you ran out of gas, and God could send an angel to put gas in your car.
That's true.
Or if we stop and help someone, we could be, entertaining an angel.
Right. That's why it says to help strangers, because
Exactly.
you don't know.
Exactly.
You just don't know.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think she saw an angel too. I think she helped
Yeah.
an angel too.
Yep, yep.
That's great. Something to share
Yeah.
throughout your family.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's wonderful. Okay, I love the chapter that talks about active waiting, because those two words don't really go together.
I know.
And I like that play on words. And you wrote, and I have a quote from the book here. "If we don't learn to wait, we could be wasting more time." Could you tell us more about that?
Sure. Yeah, and I think the story I tell in that chapter is about a friend of mine who had a habit of, if the light was red, she didn't want to stop at the red light because she felt it was wasting time.
Oh.
So she would turn down side streets, and just so she could, because she just could not sit in one place for, I don't know how long is a red light, a minute maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know, depends. And so she would just kind of drive all these side streets and kind of loop around. And I tried to reason with her one time, and I said, you're probably wasting more time by staying active, driving those side streets, when all you have to do is if you just wait a minute. Just
Yeah.
wait, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds. The light will turn green, and then you can just go on. But she said, I'm wasting time. And so active waiting is when things seem to stop in your life. Maybe you get laid off from a job, or you have to drop out of school and you feel like you're inactive. That's when you need to prepare yourself for what the Lord is preparing in the next step. And I think another story I shared in there was a friend of mine who did lose his job, but he felt a call to ministry, and I encouraged him, and I said, while you're waiting, act and prepare like you're really headed for full-time ministry anytime.
Yes.
So he took that time to work on sermons, and the day came when a church opened up, and he became a pastor of the church, and he had sermons that he had been, so it was he was
all
waiting,
set. Okay.
but he was active in that time of waiting.
Wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful. So waiting on the Lord, be still and know that I am God.
Exactly.
Great.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, page 11 of your book, you share about how Abraham gave God a new name.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can pull up the scripture. Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. And that's in Genesis 22:14. So he called the place, the Lord will provide. I never knew or thought about giving God a name.
Yeah.
And kind of like that Don Moen song, that he is the God that healeth thee.
Right.
That's like giving the Lord that name too.
Right.
So I was curious to see if you could explain a little more for the viewers what you mean by that chapter that you titled.
Sure.
Giving
yeah.
God a name.
Yeah. As I was reading through the Old Testament, I discovered that, like Abraham called God the God who provides. God, nobody had ever called God that name before. And if you read with, for example, Gideon, when the Lord called him to fight against the Midianites, and he was really struggling with that, he built an altar, and as God just kind of, gave him peace and confidence about it, he called God Jehovah Shalom, or the Lord is peace. Nobody had ever called God that before. So they were giving God new names in that whole process, and I thought, that's really amazing that they would build an altar and they would name the altar. Abraham named it the Lord will provide, Jehovah Jireh, and it just really stunned me that they would actually give him a new name. So it's not like God comes and says, I am the God who provides. It's like Abraham had this stunning moment and this realization of the character of God. Wait a minute, you're the God who provides, and that's what I'm going to call you from now on. So I just thought it's just powerful.
So based on their testimony
Yes.
of what happened in their life,
Yes.
is the new name they gave God.
Yes, and they were crucial moments that they went through. Here Abraham is going to sacrifice his son Isaac, and then he has this revelation about God and gives God a new name. Gideon, scared to death to go out and fight against the Midianites, but God gave him such peace. God didn't say, I am the God of peace. Gideon was like, whoa.
He experienced
You're
the God of peace.
Exactly. I've got this peace that I never had before, and of course we know the rest of the story. He went out and fought, and he was victorious.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you could give God a new name, what would it be?
Yeah. Actually, the name is mentioned in the book in another chapter. I call God my mastermind.
Oh.
And there's, I'll just explain briefly where that comes from. Someone had suggested, I was working on a project, and actually it was someone who was coaching me. They said, you need a mastermind group. And I didn't even know what a mastermind group was. And I said, that's intriguing. So what is that? And they said, well, you find other people who are working on projects, maybe they're at the same place where you are, and you sort of pool your resources as far as like ideas and creativity, and you speak into each others' lives about, this is where I am on my project, and I can share this resource with you. And I thought, wow, that would be great. That's what I need. So I went home and I did what every child of God would do. I prayed and I said, God, who should be in my mastermind group? And the Lord spoke to me and said, I'm your master and I have a mind. And I thought,
wow.
Well, I got my mastermind group of one, so
that's great.
He's my mastermind, and I'll sit down with him in the morning. I sit down with coffee, and I'll say, I don't talk to him. I just say, God, you talk to me. Tell me what I need to hear. Give me insight, and it's just really powerful. So I've got a question for you. If you were going to give God a new name, Sarah, what would you name him?
The Lord who cares.
Ah,
I feel like throughout my life that's been the main thing. I've always felt like God cares about me. All the things that concern me, the hard times I went through, that God was always there,
right.
and he always cared.
Yeah. Awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's whatever we experience, and then we realize God is in it. And then I've got a friend who I was sharing this concept in a Bible study, and I've got a friend who came running into the Bible study one day and she said, I've given God a new name. He's the God of the Detroit freeways. Because she was always scared to drive on the freeways in Detroit.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
But one day she
I can understand that.
Right. We've all had those moments. And one day she had no other choice. And God helped her through, and she was just it was like, thank you, God, you are the God of the Detroit freeways.
Wow.
So, and I don't think that's disrespectful to God.
No.
I think he loves it.
Sure.
So.
Yes, because he wants to be in every part of our life.
He does.
Yes.
He does.
What would you tell inspiring authors who are wanting to write a book? What advice would you give?
I would say write. If you've got it in you and you want to write a book, sit down and just you have to start somewhere. I would also recommend joining a writers group, and there are writers groups that are all over, and just meeting with them. The writers group that I was a part of met once a month, and we shared writing with each other, and they would give input. And I would also encourage attending a writers conference. And that's really where I really got very inspired. It was a 3-day conference, and I've attended a few times. And you meet publishers, you meet editors, you meet other authors, nonfiction authors, fiction authors. And then, it's very easy to publish a book, but it's hard to write a book. Because you can publish, you can do self-publishing, and but to write a book is very difficult.
And some people view it the opposite way. Some people view it's harder to publish than to write.
Yeah, no.
Is that interesting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now to try to get into a traditional publisher, that would be a challenge. But I would strongly suggest, no matter how good you think your writing is, find a good editor. The very first book I wrote that I now have pulled from sale, I thought, I know how to write, I know how to edit, and I edited it myself, and I self-published it. And I happened to send a copy to a good friend of mine, who actually I didn't realize at the time is an editor. And we happened to meet at one occasion. She had my book in her purse. And I thought, isn't that cool? She's carrying my book with her. She pulled it out, and it was full of red marks. And at first, I was appalled, and I thought, this is terrible. But then I've hired her now as my editor, and she has become my best friend. Because an editor will make you look good.
Yes. That's why I say God invented editors.
Yes, he did.
He did.
And he anoints them.
He does.
He fills their pens to overflowing with red ink.
Yes. And they're not afraid to wield the pen.
No, they are not. No, they are
But
not.
thank goodness, because they make everything look so polished and good.
Right.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, before we close here, about your new book that's coming out November 1st, right?
Yes, it is.
And 25 questions God asked.
Yes.
Okay, let's share just a little bit about that.
Sure. I went on research to find all the questions in the Bible. There are 3,241 that I found in the NIV. God asked 450 of those questions.
Okay.
So I began to write devotionals and short studies based on those, and I picked 25 questions, and that is being published by Barber and is actually up for pre-sale now. On Amazon.
Okay. Everyone, pre-sale, and it's available on Amazon.
On Amazon
So
now,
everybody check
and then
it
it will
out.
be available in bookstores on November 1st.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way that they can contact, if someone wanted to contact you in any way, how could they get a hold of you?
Sure. I'll give my email. It's mselzer, Selzer, at coachingforward.net.
Okay,
And I'm really good at answering emails.
good.
Yeah.
That's great. And and then to pick up the book, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, things like that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Either one of her books. I just want to thank you so much for being on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you,
been
Sarah.
great. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And remember, everyone, to keep sharing the good news.